And dear viewers, today it is my privilege, honor, to really bring to you an MP for Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, a gentleman whom I've known for a great many years, a gentleman who was on our set great many times. I hope to have a very informative time with him. When you listen to this show, listen to the things that are not said, not talked about. You will see the morality of these people, who they are, and how well they are representing your interests. I will try, and always have tried, to be unbiased. I want to be a diplomat, if anything, to talk to those that are in power and opposition, to bring the best information to you. Today, that is an opposition member of the government, Lambton-Kent-Middlesex MP, Mr. Bev Shipley. And welcome to In Session. We are in session with a Lambton-Kent-Middlesex MP. Mr. Bev Shipley is with us. I mean, they're going to begin to carbon date us anymore. You've been a politician now for a long time.
A long time.
Trusted man by your constituents, and that I know firsthand. I mean, you have earned their trust, and I know that your farmers speak very highly of you. As a matter of fact, even now you're going to a plowing march or something?
Yeah, Middlesex County,
okay.
which leads up to actually to the international plowing match, which is in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex down at Paincourt this year. So going to spend some time down there also. A great opportunity for people to see and experience agriculture and the rural life.
Yeah. You know, one thing we do have in common is we've been around for some time now. and the thing is, it is beautiful. There's not too many. This is kind of a luxury in a sense that you have had so much experience and so much time at what you do that unfortunately there is a wind in the air that you're retiring. You are no longer going to run. And I know that's going to be a loss to the community because they've gotten used to you.
Well, it's going to be interesting because it's, I was involved in municipal government for over 20 years. And at that time I was actively farming in dairy and cash crop. And then when we've kept the land, but we don't have the dairy anymore. Our three children had their own careers scoped out, and dairy wasn't one of them. So, and then this happened to come along at a request if I'd put my name in to run federally. So, and I've had an incredible honor and privilege it'll be 14 years. So you're right. I didn't put my name forward. I won't be putting my name forward in October of 2019. But until that time, I'm still a full-time member of Parliament, and I'm out every day that I can, except for Sundays, and that we work for the constituents. So, yeah, and I love it. That's the part, and people will tell me, and I truly believe them, that when you step back from this position, it's the people that you miss. It's an incredible relationship with people that very few in Canada get to experience. And not only with Canadians and with your colleagues on all sides, and every party, quite honestly, that you become close friends with, but also people internationally that you get to know just because of committee work and positions that you have.
Somebody in the next election will take a big sigh of relief that he is pulling out, because there was no winning from him that position. And people, it doesn't take no Einstein to figure this out. He's been doing his job, and he's been doing it well. This is what has continually put him in the office. And you've been offered positions even within the federal government, and you could have been gone, but you were committed to the constituents. Your geographical area is huge, and I mean, you had to be everywhere. Anytime there is any component to any issue, anytime there was questions or whatever, you were readily available. And I know, I've seen, and couldn't follow you. You're just too much on a go. And your office, your girl, good luck, Mr. Byelis. You know, it's kind of like he's all over the place. So you're a tough man to corner down and well, do these kind of programs with. Yet, he is still readily trying and going out of his way to accommodate even you, the television audience, and try and explain himself, what is on the table. I know lately, and I want to go a little bit into politics and try to understand some things. It was one thing when you were the government. You had ability to make decisions, and you and your government at the time, last government, you were not afraid of making a decision. You were doing well. In fact, on this continent, you were doing terrific.
Right.
I mean, with our trade with United States, Mexico, and all this stuff, it was great. Everything was going well. Farmer loved it, and I know that. What happened?
Well, I think too, you're right. Stephen Harper was an incredible, not only prime minister and leader, he's an incredible individual. He's very bright. He's very strategic. And when you talk about the concerns that happened around the world that kicked off in the United States mainly in 2008 to 2010, became one of the greatest global recessions since the Great Depression of the 30s. Interestingly enough, he had some foresight, and we talked about that as a caucus a number of times before it came. And his comment is, there's some bad times coming. And so we now are going to prepare for that, because when we got elected, we actually had a good economic time. We paid down debt. We had surpluses. We paid down national debt. We lowered the taxes for businesses and individuals. And then when the recession came, his directive was, and quite honestly to him and the late Jim Flaherty, who was our finance minister, were incredible leaders in terms of the economy, because they said, what we need to do is make sure that our businesses have the opportunity to stay in business. If there's any way that we can attract businesses, we need to be doing that. And what we need to do is only be collecting the money for the government from the people that we need to, in our best way, to run the government, to run the country. This, he always amazed me, because even though he's an incredible bright politician, his heart was, and he would say, you know, this may be tough a little bit for us as a party, but this is the best thing for Canadians, because they're the ones that really count. And so we went through that recession. Quite honestly, there were people that hurt. We know that. There were businesses, but nothing like any other countries around us. And so I think actually when the next election came, you know, he'd been prime minister for 10 years and leader. And so when people talked about the economy, most people, quite honestly, said, well, there might have been something, but not very much. When you go to talk to our friends in the United States or some that were in Europe, man, I'll tell you, they remember the recession, because it had devastating impacts on their business and on individuals. And so I think many Canadians say, well, it's just time for a change. You know, things have gone pretty good, but we should change. It's a fresh face, a fresh whatever. And so, so now we're in opposition. And people say, so what's it like? And I said, you know, that's the greatest thing about democracy, is that we have it. We have that opportunity as individuals to make choices and to select governments, whether to put them in or to take them out. And so right now, you know, this is, we have a Liberal government that is having some struggles because I think of some leadership issues of an individual that, quite honestly, hasn't had any life experience, hasn't had to run a business, hasn't had to go through any hard times, hasn't had to worry about making a living from the workplace. It comes from a trust fund. You know, so when we watch some of these things that are happening, I think it's just from lack of experience, lack of no life experience.
You know, now, full term later, we can look at our history, and I always keep telling all my staff and people around me, if you really want to know where we're going, please turn 180 degrees and look what you've come through. And that'll tell you pretty well, it's a good barometer where we're going. I know, going back and reflecting on when you were in government, Bev, there was no fear of making some decisions. And you know something, the proof is in the pudding. You can talk until you're blue. But here on this Ontario's west coast, in a community of Huron Park, Centralia, the privatization, yeah, of course, okay. A provincial government had a huge part to play in that. But originally, it was a federal property. And how this ball turned and what happened economically, I was astonished with the success story. And Bev, I'm going to need you, retired or not, I'm going to call on you, my friend. I'm going to call on you because we're putting together something called Canadiana Dynasty. And there is going to be a whole lot of disclosure in that. A beautiful history. I know that our viewers know what I'm talking about. But I want to document all this stuff to really, for it to stand alone, stand as a statue that we did not build for those that have been there before us, paved the way, and made awesome things happen. Well, when I look and see where we were, turning back, looking through all the details, all the things that we've come through. Okay, you were not directly part of the Ontario West Coast because you're a Lambton-Kent-Middlesex MP, but neighboring MP, you played your part. And boy, it was good partnering with you. And the proof is in the pudding. Our, at the time, Prime Minister took notice of South Huron. He was very proud of South Huron, a success story that had been happening there in how it turned our economy around. 24 jobs or employers were made readily available, and they have hired. It was amazing what has taken place. Some of the biggest industry, biggest employers, and I'm talking like Godrich Air, and I'm talking like some of these plastic companies and Nudi and Italian company, and still going on strong. It is amazing what took place. And then, silently and quietly, another thing was recognized. That in a municipality of 10,000 people, there was actually, and I didn't even know this, it came from your government to me. And then I started to research that, and yeah, boy, you were right. 23 Christian churches. They were talking about mainline churches. And they've recognized that it was a strong Christian community. And that is usually not the norm that one would address. But I was glad that it was addressed, because even us as a television outfit in the area, or station in the area, we have broadcasted some 6, 7 churches and their programs and whatnot. And it has snowballed, and it is amazing. When you look at now, you can maybe put it philosophically, okay? And let me just do that first. Some of those churches went down from very little, minute, unknown, into real estate-wise, into $6, $7, $8 million churches. And they have no mortgages. And they have people, and they have a good, solid following. And I mean, there's some people with some pretty good standards behind them. People you can work with and achieve greatness with. Overall, community has been really one that there was a good level of trust that was becoming available between federal, provincial governments, and at that level, even our county and municipal governments. Everything clicked, just simply clicked. And I know the legwork, and I know what it takes on your behalf as an MP. You're the one that is the rubber that hits the road among your constituents and make it happen. And the proof is, 14 years later, you're still doing it. There's no way that if you were not doing a job, if you were not loved, you would not be sitting here today. We would not be doing this. And that is a marvelous, beautiful thing. And I like to address success stories that we have gone through. Controversies are plenty. And I've learned something as a journalist in the area. I was a very gentle journalist, careful journalist. I did not want to... I dealt with trouble. Trouble was dealt with, but in a loving manner, in a kind manner. We put on a table. We did some programs called round table sessions. And in these sessions, Bev, we have resolved issues that was unbelievable. Provincial ministers, caucus members came, ministers, and listened to our, and you know something? In no time at all, things were resolved. Premier of Ontario came down, sat down, talked to people, talked to everybody. And there were some beautiful people in both, in Ottawa and in Toronto, that you could work with. And we just ended up being a liaison, literally, that was between governments and the people, trying to make sense out of it all and understand everything, and always trying to figure out the formulas, how to bring it into fruition.
Yeah. There's just two things that I've tried to live by, and that is you work hard, and when you say you're going to do something, do it. Mm-hmm. And not everybody agrees with my thoughts all the time, or maybe even the principles, I'm not sure. But I've had people say, well, you know, I don't agree with you on this particular, but I always appreciate that you take your position and you defend it. Mm-hmm. And you know, not for me to put somebody down. That's a great thing about a democracy. We have that opportunity in this country to have difference of opinion. That's why people say, so when you're in the opposition, what happens now? And I said, as I mentioned earlier, that's what democracy is. I said, our responsibility in opposition, that's what the word means, to oppose legislation that you think the government is not on track with, or that the Canadian people, what is better for the Canadian people. So that's what gives the strength of democracy. So we have that opportunity. And is it different? Absolutely it's different. Instead of developing the legislation, we now look at that legislation and say, through our committees, but also through the Parliament itself, how do we strengthen it? Or should it even be there? Is it a direction that's good for Canadians? Is it going to make Canada a better, safer, more prosperous, culturally stronger country. So it takes, and it's one of the things I've always said in legislation that's sometimes difficult, is that legislation, even though it may deal with one title area, it often has different components in it. And some of those components are maybe very well received and very good. There may be some very difficult ones in it that you can't. But as a member of Parliament and as a representative of the constituents in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex, as any other member of Parliament would have, is that you make a decision. And that decision is why people say, well, I'll catch you at your office. And I said, not likely, you better make an appointment. I don't spend a lot of time in my office. I spend most times out.
I know.
And because I want to know what people are thinking and what's the general trend of like this riding in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex. Obviously the clean and clear business is agriculture. That's the driving industry within this riding. But it is made up of those small businesses all around it, the service industry, the supply industry, the input industry, and it is made up of small towns. And that's really where the strength is, and that's where I think this riding is so important in the context, like some of the other ones ridings around, made up of rural people, small towns, small businesses, which are the driving engine, by the way, across Canada of our economy.
Sure.
And so we need to make sure there's these great big industries, and we need those, but they should not come second to our small businesses that every day, we're just outside Park Hill today. You go down around us and all kinds of these small industries. You talked about up in Exeter, the Huron Tractor, for example. Then there's the international dealers. There's all those input dealers, service providers all around. They hire people, they pay them, they go to work every day, do their job. They just want government to I think, just make sure what you do the best thing for the people and the business. And for many, it's just like government, stay out of the red tape. We've got so much red tape in place. One of the things that we did in government is that if you were going to bring in, that's a directive to any minister. If you're going to bring in legislation or a regulation in it, you better be prepared to take one or two of equal value out, because we're not going to just continue to do that. I see provincially, I believe Doug Ford has said the same thing, because we just get small businesses. If you go to make an application out, you almost now, unless they have got the internal resources, some of them got to hire an outside consultant to fill out an application. And that's not right. It's just way too much red tape to make an application to be part of any government program. And so now, instead of spending $5,000 or $10,000, quite honestly, and sometimes more than that, that money should stay with that business. That helps them hire people, helps them be competitive, and that's why it's important for government to not be collecting taxes that they don't need. They should not be collecting taxes for special projects of their own. They should only be collecting. We've got defense, we've got road responsibilities, we've got national defense, and we have trade. We have a taxation department. We have foreign affairs that's where we need to be focusing on. And what are those necessary areas which are important to Canadians? We need to be supporting our military. This is why we've got this great country that's free right now.
Yeah.
And it's free because we've had veterans in our Canadian forces that have gone to bat. They're the ones that have stood between us and the villains, quite honestly. And so every day, those are the ones we want to make sure that we thank for the freedoms that we have.
There's a fear. If you start inventing something that has not been proven yet, and you get this idea, and I kind of fear a little bit our youth coming on into politics. They're full of something and vinegar, if you know what I mean. And at the same time, I know we need a refreshment. This is all great. But I hate to fix things that work. I hate to emphasize and are you trying to find something to do? If you go to the old timers, let them help you and tell you what works, what will work, and a difference you will make then is going to be noted by your constituents, by your country, by your people, those you serve, and that is hard to find. I recall from my past. And I got something, I had a little bit of luxury of going back and analyzing what worked and what didn't work. There were some, and I try to be unbiased as I can. Folks, understand, this is a different job altogether. To be a journalist and to be neutral is the goal, but it is very hard. People do make it hard because I recall in your opposition, there were people that were, well, yesterday they were in politics, very ambitious, very this, very that, and all of a sudden, boom, gone off the scene. No, nothing's heard from them again. It is, and their standards and that they have put into place is no more. It seems like a total waste of time, you know. Democracy is a beautiful thing, and you well put it. People will make those decisions. It's just, you know, I have a huge responsibility in educating the voter, constituents, the public out there in do's and don'ts, rights and wrongs, what works and doesn't work. And this is where I will invest myself silly. I will try and do anything and everything that I can to expose that works and that doesn't work. Because you know something? Our future depends on it. Our children depend on it. Our everything depends on it. Now, with this economical situation in the world today, people are no longer passive. Everybody is wanting to latch onto something that was tangible. Look at the United States. This guy's a businessman. You're not going to pull a wall over his eyes or do wishy-washy pipe dreams and all this kind of stuff. That guy doesn't buy it. That's not to say I'm for or against. I love where people can sit down to a table, make some tangible decisions that improve our lives, that improves our business, and guarantees and secures our futures. Mm-hmm. A tough thing to do. But when you really analyze and see, you need to find some people like this old cowboy here. I'm sorry, but you know what I mean. You know, somebody who has already got that in his heart, body, and soul. And I know him for many years. And he has invested himself silly in what he does. He loves doing it. People are only good at their job if it's not a job, if it's something they really love to do. And you're a servant.
Yeah, that's right. That's like the most important part of it. And I just want to go back, though, to something you touched on. And I know education, in terms of the education system, for the most part, is all provincial. Mm-hmm. But it was an interesting, I was reading about the number of students, young people that are going through, and then when they graduate out of high school going into university, mm-hmm. they really have no idea of where they're going or what they want. And I think one of the recommendations, I'm a big believer. I love innovation. Mm-hmm. I love that movement in technology. When I look at agriculture, it's been incredible. Our industry, what it has done. But what I'm saying is that when you have all of that, I think it's always wise to go and not forget how we got there and talk to people that have the foundation of what that leapt off of to become the next step. And when I often think of in agriculture, there's a lot of great technology and innovation. Most of that idea started in somebody's drive shed. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. by a farmer that had an idea and put it together, and then it became got branded, got taken over, And then it just expanded and drove forward. GPS, the whole technology around it, robotics, the computerization within the industry, all aspects of it. And so I think one of the recommendations that talked about is the encouragement to young people, young people to go out, volunteer. Make sure you get out and get a job so that you get life experience. You actually get to interact with people, because going through life until getting all your education and then going into the real world, it's a huge eye-opener if you've not had some of that life experience getting there.
Yeah.
And how to deal with people, what it's actually like to make a wage, to be on time, to have an employer, to have responsibility as an employee. And yesterday, my wife and I, on Sunday, we went out and had lunch at this restaurant, and I couldn't get over the number of young people, energetic, kind, polite, high energy. And I said to the young lady that ours, I said, how do you like your job? Oh, I love it. And now the universities are going to be coming back, and it's going to be much more exciting. You know, I thought, wow, that's a great enthusiasm. And I asked her a little bit about her future. She's actually one of those that, because she said, I've found some things that I wanted to do now that I didn't think. Some things that I thought I wanted to do now that I really don't want to do. So, but that's part of dealing with people and getting some life experience and volunteering. That's you're the winner when you volunteer. You know, you really are. It's and to get out and help in the community get a job. It isn't always about the money. You know, it really isn't.
Money does come. Money will follow.
Yeah,
If we really, we're never going to love anything we do unless we get properly introduced into the society, into that work, into that infrastructure that exists out there. How do you think Doug will do provincially?
I think he's doing a great job. You know, it was an interesting, I had a journalist say to me at the start, so, Doug Ford asked you for advice, what would you say to him? And I thought for a second, I said, stay true to your word. He said, what? I said, just stay true to your word. You won a large majority based on some principles that you believed in, that Ontarians were telling you. Now just do it.
Yeah. The tax relief would be nice. I think probably well deserving, because all of us, my God, when you come to think of it, when you really look and see, for those necessities in life, we're talking like hydro here, gas, and those things that we, you know, that's a provincial issue, but I know is dear to your heart, because you live in Ontario. Your pants are being tailored as well. And this is the future. I know that we need to secure the future. And sometimes there has been politicians who have paid dearly to begin something, to take those corrective measures and launch them and change things. But when you look and analyze tax system and everything else in the land, it is excessive. And especially provincially, it is very, very hard to get ahead. And then there were some measures taken against the small business. And I have to say that, because those were the words that small business came back to me with. Why? Why all this? I am trying to provide for jobs. I mean, yeah, minimum wage has gone up and all that. It's the formula of having to succeed is not there. And yet you're not given tools nor ability nor any kind of backing to succeed. On the contrary, there was measures taken against the small business in the province. And I know when Stephen Harper, back in the day, he was backing provinces. And I know that at the time, McGuinty was a premier here. He was receiving a nice portfolio, nice wad of cash, if you will, for educating and for making the future better. Where do you think future is with?
What I can tell you
Yeah.
is that when you look around the world and you look at countries and governments, the countries that are successful, the countries that have a strong economy, the countries that leave disposable income for people that are out working and that do the best are the ones that are taxed the least. The ones that are under the thumb of a government and their leader that continues to draw from these people, from their people, because they tell and they get the people to believe that, listen, you give us your money and we'll tell you the best way and how to spend it. And when you look around the world at those countries and how the people live, whether it's in some of the African countries or look at Venezuela right now. Like I forget, like 3,000% in inflation or something. The shelves are empty. I mean that takes it to an extreme. But if you want success, and we had that in 2008 and 10, and actually through our term, is that actually people were doing very well. People, for the most part, don't think government should be shelling out money to them. Most people will say, give me the opportunity to work. Work is a great thing. Having the ability to work. In every country, we all realize, every government realizes, that not everybody can work. We know that. And so, as a government, you have to have a passion and a compassion for those that don't have, whether it's physical or mental, that don't have that ability to work. But for those that do, they need to be given the opportunity. Businesses need to be able to be successful so that they can hire people. Our education system, from my point of view, has got to be one that builds an intuition within people so that they, when they graduate, they have a direction in which they want to travel, and that they have that opportunity to get a job, so that they can build, so that they can, if they have a family, if they can have a house, they can have, and be able to have those freedoms within a country. So I just always get concerned when I see governments saying, well, we're going to have this program for you, we're going to have the, it's basically a handout. And what happens with handouts, you pick winners and losers. And we're seeing a little bit of that right now, and we're seeing that tremendously, unfortunately, in the United States, where they've become so protectionist. The president over there right now is so protectionist, and so now what he's doing is he's putting tariffs on all these countries around the world that he trades with, and we're in the midst of that with NAFTA and TPP. He stepped out of TPP. But NAFTA right now is the uncertainty with our businesses. I'm talking to people every day about what's happening, what can we do, what should we, where's the position? And quite honestly,
we don't seem to have a backbone anymore like we used to. I recall not that long ago we had a beautiful program together. We were #1 in the world as far as our industry, our import, export, our strength, and our dollar, and our strategy, our outlook to growth and everything else. We've given up a lot lately under this present government. I'm sorry to say, but something is gone, and is no more. To reestablish relationship with the world like we used to have is not easy.
Well, it takes a strong leader.
Yeah.
And that strong leader today, in the world that we live in today, what happens when you're in your country or when you travel is instant news around the world. Every leader knows how you carry yourself and how you act as a leader. And so I'm thinking some of the things that have happened with our present Prime Minister have not boded very well in terms of his maturity, in terms of his leadership. And so, unfortunately, I believe that that has a negative impact in terms of how some of these countries are dealing with us in terms of trade, in terms of taking us seriously. And so as a result, we're struggling right now with a country, our closest trading partner, which will always be, but with a president that is very strong business person, changes his mind. I'm not sure about his ethics carrying much credibility anymore, but it is what it is. He's making it very difficult for Canada. So as an opposition party, we actually work with the government. We encourage the government to make sure that these trade agreements get through. We encourage our government to make sure that our energy, that we have so many resources, actually get to market, that Canadians get to use our own product instead of bringing it in from Saudi Arabia and Venezuela and Nigeria, from these countries that have no human rights, no environmental track record at all. But that doesn't seem to be important right now to this government.
With the United States, we're kind of joined at the hip.
Yep.
Like it or not, we pretty well have to deal with them.
Well, we've got like 9,000 kilometers of mostly unprotected border, largest in the world.
And then the pipelines that keep on going through the borders are not respective of the borders. So all these things that we do, and when you look at our food and energy and all these trucks and tankers and everything else, back and forth and back and forth, we're still, thank God, doing business. We're having to do business with the United States. But in order to secure our roots, we need to grow those roots a little bit deeper in the sand of our lives, because there is no clay here. With the present administration, both sides, there's no clay. It could be uprooted quickly. But it's still, even though it would be nice to grow some root, some security, something rather, so that there is some kind of future. It's not easy being in your position today. I kind of don't envy you one way of wanting out.
Well, I don't want out. It's just, I don't want out. That's not the case. It's actually, Dan, there's seasons in your life. And
I should rephrase, because I don't want out what I'm doing too. My kids, they're telling me, Dad, time is, slow down, retire. I can't.
No.
I love to serve too. So I know your heart.
I'm stepping back, and we'll see what develops. But there's seasons in life, and I think part of what success is knowing what to do when those things come along. And so it was just right. And so I wanted to give, you know, I'm a year and 14 months away. But I wanted to give whoever comes along as the next candidate that'll be running in my place as much opportunity, because I didn't actually have much time. The timelines were very short before the election. I wanted to give this individual the opportunity to for people to know them, to get across this large riding that we have in Lambton-Kent-Middlesex and get to be known, because we have a great opportunity to form the government next time, and I certainly want to make sure that whoever this candidate is, that he or she will be the Member of Parliament for Lambton-Kent-Middlesex.
Amazing. I go and drive 3 hours on a vacation, and I'm still in your riding. It's interesting, yeah. It's I don't know where the future is, and you know, looking at socio-economical or socioeconomics, the policies that are out there, our ability to deal with the world and everything else. There was a time, and I always reflect back to those times, when our Prime Minister had stamina, had strength to go to whatever country and sit at whatever table to discuss futures, to discuss trade, and build platforms on which the later ministers could have joined and finessed the ideas, and we had something. At least that also opens for that positive attitude and a positive outlook for the constituents, for the people, for Canadians out there, to have some trust into the leaders that are there before them.
I think the key thing, Dan, in terms of any of the leaders, is that, and you hit on it, is that when you go, you need to go with respect, and you need to know that that who you're meeting with, you've built a relationship of trust. Mm-hmm. There's nothing worse than having someone tell you something, and when they leave or shortly after, they actually, it would be portrayed that obviously that was just a message to get something done, because when they walked out, they actually did something totally different. And I think that's part of what's happened in Canada right now, whether you just go back to the election platform of this government. When Stephen Harper, just to step up, Canada was recognized around the world mm-hmm. as the second best country in the world to do business in. Mm-hmm. That now has slipped down a number of notches. Yeah. And I think that's because what happens is people actually had but they had investment confidence in the country. And if you start losing the investment confidence, then obviously the ability to persuade companies to come in, or for those to continue to grow, because there's uncertainty mm-hmm. around the direction in which you're going, mm-hmm. affects then the ability for countries for you to attract businesses to come in.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to say something you're not going to like. I recall back in the days, and I'm really going to go carbon date this, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the father of our Prime Minister. Now that guy, we've learned to love and hate at the same time. He did what had to be done, and you know, it wasn't popular many times. And Canadians knew we're going to get the shaft here. But it had to be. And he said at 12 o'clock noon on Saturday, I'm going to give you the shaft. And it has to be. There's no way out. Yeah, it was the truth. And he dealt with the truth, sold the truth for what it is, and that was that. I don't think his son is the Prime Minister his dad was. And there was a guy who opened borders and had open immigration policy as well. But he was very careful how he did things there. Now, he was not physically responsible probably with all the monies and everything else. We know that. But there are today men that are afraid to make a decision, and that have bunch of people around them helping them to make a decision that is really hardly a decision at all, that will make no difference to a Canadian life whatsoever. One thing that I cannot understand, when I came to Canada, I loved this country. This country had a standard. This country had the following. We knew that we were Canadians, and it had Canadian ethics in place, Canadian constitution, if you will, in place. Everything was there. You knew how to be Canadian. Today, I dare you to tell me what it is to be a Canadian. You don't know no more. I mean, the standard is gone. We've been sold out. What happened?
Well, I hear that a bit, and I think too part of it is our whole social structure. Things that, when so I'm a lot older than most. But things that when I was growing up, and even when our kids were little, growing up that were not acceptable, whether it's what we watch or what we can say in public or what we do, all those things now, for the majority it seems, are just everyday and acceptable.
Yeah.
So we've had a social structure change that says, you know, I think the institutions are having a lot more impact. Then I get concerned when families don't have the authority to say and do and have that in our education system, and in terms of some disciplining of the kids don't even have to tell their parents once they hit 16 years old what happens at school.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I just think that, and you know, am I old-fashioned? I don't think so. I think it's about guidance. It's about giving guidance and having the support of the teacher and the student. And I mean,
You just said it. You just said it beautifully. You love innovation. You love things that are being updated, and especially our technology and everything else, even our thinking to a degree. Yeah. But in a process, we can't sell out our standard, our foundations we've been built on. If that sneaks from under us,
I'm just afraid of, you know, we see young people with the amount of people that are ending up incarcerated.
Yeah.
Mostly it would appear around drugs, you know, and so now we're going to legalize another one. People say, well, you know, prohibition didn't work. Well, maybe there's something about decriminalizing it that would have been an opportune. What I'm seeing out there is right now the unpreparedness of families, of our education, of businesses, of our municipalities, the authority in terms of how we're going to deal with this is not in place yet, and it's going to come in October. You know, that was a priority of our Prime Minister, and so it's going to happen. It seemed to be that getting it in was much more important than how to implement it to make sure all the gaps were filled, and the security and the preparation was all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, I guess.
Folks, I'm going to have to conclude this program, but I believe you're beginning to understand. Last half an hour, certainly in this hour, we have learned a lot, but from an old-timer, somebody who's been around the block a time or two, somebody who knows what it is that is required, somebody that knows how to communicate your needs, not just wants and all these pleas that we may have, but the needs. And somebody who has done it well, and somebody who has gone through 4 different elections, and I bet, hands down, if he runs again, he'll get a 5th one. There's no question. There's no question. I know that. You've been around, and you have earned our respect, and certainly your constituents trust you. You've earned that trust. Trust is not blindly given.
You never take anything for granted.
No.
So you work for it.
And I'm hoping. I'm going to just run something by you now. There's a good friend of mine, Liam O'Connor, doctor, has just retired, and we went to his retirement party. This was the sweetheart of a guy. Yeah, time comes. We all have to retire sooner or later. But his care was so intimate and personal to his clients. Clients were family. This is the man that cared for my health like better than a parent can. You know what I mean? Yeah. And medically, this guy had really stood in the gap well, and he is tough to replace. But you know, I'm going to put something on him, and I know he is building his replacement now. And you got about 14 months to do so. But teach your replacement. Show him or her the ropes, what you have done. Give him your success. We're going to, as a community, be that furthermore advanced in dealing with somebody that is already familiar with the ropes, familiar with that stress of the rubber that takes to move that vehicle on the road, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Same with this doctor. How do you replace somebody like that? You know, this is amazing. And he said, you know, I'm going to be hanging around a community long enough to ensure that the transition and all this is smoother. You know, I don't think it's going to be all that great because there's some men that are just irreplaceable. Some are gifted in their job and had calling for that job. And there's a difference between a calling and doing a job. This 9 to 3 or 4 or whatever, it's a job. But men who really love their job are good at their job, and they have proven that. Oh, God, I want to go out with a bang like that, too. I want to prove, I want to do all this. That Canadiana, I need that. I need that because, you know something, this Ontario West Coast needs it. The people need it. It is tremendous. Next to a politician and the job you have done, I always long to be that communicator or liaison or that line of communication between all of those that can deliver for us, as he so beautifully has over last 14 years. Those are people we need to seek out and get their advice. And you see this hour now, this time we have spent on TV, we've learned something. We've gotten into his heart. We've gotten what is in him. His understanding has been well communicated to us. If we can elect us officials like this to help us with the future and everything else, I think we have it made. It's just somehow we always think grass is greener on the other side. And or, listen, I'm all for young people. Young people need to do something, but we need to enable them. We can't just let them loose, give them education, that a university degree or whatever, and go do the job. No, it doesn't work. You have to literally spend time with them and, like you said, volunteer. Make yourself available. Try and learn and really get a sense of jobs or job opportunities out there so that you can tangibly commit yourself to something, because it's going to be a lifetime of a commitment. Bev, I can't thank you enough for this program. This has been very enlightening, and you hold nothing back. You are a great man. Continue to do so. Hi to Barb and your family, and thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan.
On behalf of all of our viewers, job well done, sir.
Thank you. You're very generous and very kind, and
hopefully we'll see you soon. I want to see you before you go.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, folks. Thank you.